Garrett, let's move on to a take that I saw in our YouTube comments. And this is kind of a two-pack, both from Michigan fans. I'm assuming Michigan fans, judging by what they said. We had Tom and Sean. Tom said that Michigan, they're talking about the Texas versus Michigan game, week 2. Michigan will win this game and it won't be close. And Sean doubles down and says Will Johnson is going to get 2 interceptions off of Quinn Ewers in this game. So, we did a whole segment on this game not too long ago. You can go check our video on breaking down the X's and O's of this game. But is this? I'll start with the take that Michigan is going to win this one going away. Do you have that in the range of outcomes for this game?
I think it's in the range of outcomes, but not the way a lot of people see it. If Michigan can go back to playing their style of football, where they just lean on you, right? This is what they did so well last year. They lean on you, they lean on you, they lean on you. It's a defensive game. And then somewhere down the stretch, they just score 1 or 2 breakaway touchdowns. Yeah, that could be a possibility. I don't think that Texas is going to just roll over, though. I don't think that they're just going to be hey, we're going to go down without a fight. So I would put that, yes, in the range of possible outcomes, but I'd put it pretty low down the line on that. I think the big thing about this is, look, games are won and lost up front. A lot is going to be made about, the new quarterback for Michigan and, they lost Blake Corum and everything else. But I don't think enough people are talking about how Michigan's offensive and defensive lines are dominant, and they are going to be the better unit against Texas both ways. So does that turn into, a bad day for Quinn Ewers where he's getting sacked or pressured a bunch and, he can't get enough time to find his new receivers, which again, remember, Texas is losing a lot of talent on the offensive side. They've got a lot of talent and they nailed it in the transfer portal and did a really good job recruiting. They've got talent on the roster, but they're losing, Xavier Worthy. They're losing a lot of guys, A.D. Mitchell. We're losing a lot of guys that are, massive key contributors, Jatavion Sanders as well. Key contributors on that offense that without them, this offense is going to be a little different. And this is week 2. So again, role players, learning what they need to do, receivers figuring out who's the main guy. Ewers building up chemistry with all those guys. It'll be a challenge. And that's a really good Michigan front 7. That's a really good Michigan, specifically defensive line. So they probably will give Texas some problems. That being said, Texas is talented enough on offense to keep this one close. I don't think that they're going to run away with it. I don't really think either side runs away with this one. I think this is a relatively low scoring affair. But I think, your final score could be something like a 28-24 or maybe even a 31-27, but something relatively low scoring for what you would expect out of a Texas or a Michigan win.
Texas is a 3.5-point favorite right now, according to FanDuel. If you held a gun to my head, I think I would take Michigan in the points right now. I think Texas offensive line is going to hold their own against Michigan. Quinn will get pressured a little bit, but that is going to be one of the best offensive line units in the entire country this year. If they can't hold their own against this Michigan defensive line, the rest of the Big Ten needs to really, really temper their expectations against Michigan, because no one in the Big Ten will be able to hold their own against Michigan if Texas cannot do it. So I do think that Texas O-line will hold relatively strong. Michigan will get a couple sacks. They'll make a couple plays in the backfield. But what I'm really worried about for Texas is the inverse of that. I think they lost too much talent on the defensive line, and Michigan is reloading on the offensive line. So I do see a scenario where Michigan gets 5 or 6 yards a carry and doesn't really have to do anything too creative offensively, and they are able to move the football. We saw that against Washington, right? We saw an undersized D-line that made a lot of plays throughout the year, but an undersized D-line that was dealing with some injuries against Michigan in that national championship game. And didn't Donovan Edwards rip off like a 67-yard touchdown run or something like that?
His first 2 carries, quite literally, his first 2 carries went for long touchdowns.
Yeah, that is a scenario that I could see happening. Now, I think Texas will keep it much closer than Washington was able to in that national championship game. Texas is far more talented. Texas will hopefully not be dealing with the injuries that Washington was dealing with
right
at the end of that game. But people just cementing Texas saying that Texas is just going to waltz into the big house and win this relatively easily, I don't see that happening at all. I think
No.
this game is going to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be low scoring.
Well,
Like you said, I would probably also take the under at 48.5 if you held a gun to my head right now in July. I think it's going to be an absolute heavyweight knockdown drag out fight.
well, and you mentioned it briefly, but I think there's a real chance that the run game for Michigan is going to carry them, because the other thing that we've seen is if you don't necessarily have the talent of the other offense, you can still control the game on the ground, right? It would not surprise me at all if you see Donovan Edwards get like 30 carries in this game, and then Alex Orji, kind of a run first type quarterback. Maybe he's still working on the pass game. It's a lot of quick completions, but he throws in another 10, 15 carries, and they end up running for something like 300 yards and score a bunch and all that. Like, that wouldn't necessarily shock me in terms of outcomes for this game. And then if you're, Quinn Ewers and company, you have to be extremely efficient with the time that you have the ball with the rested Michigan defense, right? Your defense running out of gas, and so they're, starting to do that kind of it. That's within the realm of possibilities. Now, look, when you got Quinn Ewers, you feel pretty good about your ability to win any game you're playing in, because he's a really good quarterback and he can make any throw on the field. So, is it going to be a thing where, Quinn just comes in there and rips them apart? That's also within the realm of possibilities. He could just go out there and ball out and get like 400 yards passing. I just, I'm also looking at this and saying Michigan didn't bend on the defensive side. Their secondary didn't really bend against Washington. And, you're thinking, like, what were they able to do to Michael Penix, Rome Odunze, like the whole, you know what I mean? Like, what were they able to do that whole game? They kind of just shut it down. And they kind of just said, like, no, like, we're not going to let you do what you normally do. I mean, Penix had one of his worst games of his, career at Washington in that national championship game. And that's not because he's a bad player. It's not because he wasn't ready for the moment. It's because Michigan's that good on defense. If they can do that again, I don't see where Texas is better, especially not on the road at the big house.
It's going to be a fascinating game, and I think it's going to be a fun benchmark for both of these teams. Both of them lost a lot. Michigan definitely lost more than Texas. They do get home field. Sharon Moore, this is going to be a fantastic test for him as well. But if there's one thing that I know about him as a play caller, he does not get cute. He has proven that time and time again over this run the last 2 or 3 years with the Wolverines. He is not going to get cute. He will run the ball until you prove that you can stop it. And then he'll get creative in the passing game when he absolutely has to. So, and that's not a knock on him. That's not saying his offense is boring. He gets stuff done. And Kirk Campbell coming in and being promoted to the offensive coordinator, promoted from within, he's going to be the exact same way. Yep. So Texas is going to have to bring their big boy pants. They found their big boy pants last year. Yep. And they're going to compete in this game. I don't think it'll be a blowout either way. The secondary could be to address the Will Johnson comment. I don't think he'll pick off Quinn Ewers.
That would be exceptional. And I just want to be clear. I think Will Johnson is going to lock down whoever he's across from. I would be shocked if the receiver if it's Isaiah Bond or whoever else. I'd imagine he'd be on Bond. Whoever he's going to be across from, I would be shocked if that receiver gets 50 yards receiving, just because Will Johnson is that level good. He is that level talented. If you don't watch this guy's game, go watch his game. Like he has held his own against much better receivers than whatever Texas is going to try out against him. And that's not to knock Texas receivers. I'm just saying he's done it against the top level talent. He did it against Marvin Harrison Jr. He, held him in check. He did it against Washington, their entire receiving court. Like this is a guy who can do that, right? He held Alabama in check last year, right? So, I would be shocked if he gets 2 picks, because I would think even if he gets an interception, I would imagine Quinn kind of just stops throwing that direction at a certain point and just says, like, well, I saw him pick off a ball that I thought was pretty good, so I'm just going to not worry about him. I'm going to figure out where Will Johnson is. I'm going to go this side of the field now, and just kind of decide not to throw at him besides, throwing 2. If he throws 2 picks on Will Johnson, Michigan could blow this game out.
If he throws 1, I don't think they're going to go that way again the rest of the game. So, yeah, this is going to be a fun game. Bottom line, if you're a Michigan fan or a Texas fan hearing us talk about this, don't be overconfident in this game either way, because I think it's going to be an absolute knockdown, drag out, bare knuckle fight. And I can't wait to watch it and be glued to my screen the entire time.
Gracious, how about